The first major policy that has been announced from the Conservatives this election is mandatory national service for all 18-year-olds. 12 months of mandatory national service will be reintroduced by the Conservatives if they win the general election. 18-year-olds will be able to apply for one of 30,000 full-time military placements or volunteering 1 weekend a month, carrying out a community service. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he believed bringing back compulsory service across the UK would help foster the national spirit that emerged during the pandemic. The Conservatives said the move would help ensure young people who are not employed in education or training or at risk of getting involved with crime would be diverted away from lives of unemployment and crime. They were unable to say what sanctions those not taking part could face. Instead, they argued national service would provide valuable work experience and ignite a passion for a future career in healthcare, public service, charity, or the armed forces. The party said the £2.5 billion cost of national service would see £1.5 billion diverted from Levelling Up's UK Shared Prosperity Fund from 2028. A further £1 billion would come from plans to crack down on tax avoidance and evasion. Callum, what are your thoughts on bringing back national service?
Hi, Curtis. Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure as always. It's what a story. What a way to kick off the general election. It's madness. It's madness. It's very clear to me that the Conservative Party are trying to appeal to a very particular type of voter. They're going after the older voters. They're going after the type that are likely to be voting for reform, trying to pull some of those votes back that they're going to end up missing out on. But something that I noticed when I was sort of reading around this story today was that there was actually a question that went in to the Secretary of State for Defence on Thursday, the day after the general election was called. And this question came in by Mark Pritchard. And I've just got it here, if I may just read it. So Mark Pritchard is a Conservative MP. And the question was to ask the Secretary of State for Defence whether he has made an assessment of the political impact of the reintroduction of national service on national security. And the response came back from Andrew Morrison, who is the Parliamentary Under Secretary for the State of Defence. And this was the government's official response. This was the day after the general election was called. He said, the government has no current plans to reintroduce national service. Since 1963, when the last national servicemen were discharged, it's been the policy of successive governments that the best way of providing for the defence of our country is by maintaining professional armed forces staffed by volunteers. The demanding, increasingly technical nature of defence today is such that we require highly trained, professional men and women in our regular and reserve armed forces, fully committed to giving their best in defending our country and its allies. Mr. Morrison goes on to say, if potentially unwilling national service recruits were to be obliged to serve alongside the professional men and women of our armed forces, it would damage morale, recruitment and retention, and would consume professional military and naval resources. If, on the other hand, national service recruits were kept in separate units, it would be difficult to find a proper and meaningful role for them, potentially harming motivation and discipline. For all these reasons, there are no current plans for the restoration of any form of national service. This was literally from the Department of Defence the day after the general election was called. This was the 23rd. This was Thursday. So what is it now? It's now Monday, and it was yesterday in papers that Rishi Sunak made this pledge to bring back national service. So what's changed in those few days, I wonder?
Well, I think there's some poor briefing going on inside the cabinet, because we've also had some say that there won't be any punishment for those that won't take it up. And now we've heard that parents may be fined if their 18-year-old doesn't take it up, which is funny because that basically just tells me, well, the rich can get away with it. They can just buy themselves out of it.
It's certainly that. Also, just quickly, if I may, how do you fine an adult for the behavior of another adult? Like that's not how things work. We don't fine other adults because another adult's done something they shouldn't have done. If you're under 18, fair enough. Parents get fined for not sending the kids to school. But once you turn 18, how is it the responsibility of the parents? It just makes no sense. It's not been thought out at all. It's been shoved together, written for the papers to make a statement and trying to appeal to a certain type of voter.
just to play devil's advocate for a second, isn't there some benefit, at least the idea of some sort of community service? We've had 40 years of individualism. Obviously, the Tories aren't thinking about it in this way, but could an effect of this mean we have a generation of those who think more in terms of society? Is it possible that this may bring a renewed spirit of the post-war consensus and that period, which brought about the NHS, the welfare state, and strong social democracy? Or is this, wishful thinking?
I think we've already got an up and coming generation that have a renewed sense of society. I think the young people of today have shown through the social actions around multiple different issues that have happened over the you know last couple of years. I think the way that they're voting shows that the keen and eager, certainly the 18 to 25 bracket. And I think somebody pointed out on Twitter when this policy was announced that young people in this country arguably have already done the national service in the years of COVID when they couldn't go to school, they didn't get an education. Um, they stayed at home, they missed out on their education. The older end of the spectrum missed out on the university education, and weren't able to go in and learn that. And I think what a lot of young people have already given up a hell of a lot for this country in recent years, and it's a huge ask to say right now you're gonna have to either go and serve in the army for 12 months, or we're going to force you to give up a month of your year. And he's cleverly described this um, as I think it was 25 days in the first year, which also implies that there's thoughts around possibly extending this. And it's also worth pointing out that countries that have a form of national service, it doesn't stop at 18, it usually extends to 25. So there's also the possibility that, if the Tories were to win the next election and implement this policy, they could see a situation where people who can vote in this election, who are already 18 or older, may then end up having to take part in this form of national service.
Do you think this policy may indicate that the Tories know they're going to lose and they just want to keep their own base? Because obviously it's not appealing to young people, but I think they know they can't win against young people. I mean, when we poll people under 40, the Green Party comes second. So I guess maybe this is about shoring up their own base. And maybe even though the policy is bad, this is probably a good strategy for the Tories if they want to at least keep some of their seats.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said at the beginning, that they're appealing to. I think the Conservative Party are worried about the threat of reform, not in terms of reform winning seats, but in terms of the Conservative Party hedging voters to them. And I think that they're trying to appeal to voters of a certain age. Ironically, voters who have never had to do national service themselves, most of them. Um, with this sort of, the youth of today need to be better disciplined because they're the problem. They're the troublesome teens of today, and we need to snap them into shape and give them some good discipline, and then they'll turn out all right. And I think it's just an old fashioned view, but as far as what you say in terms of them doing this knowing that they've lost the election, it certainly feels like, I mean, no planning's gone into this, right? The fact that the government were making official statements on Thursday saying that the government have no plans for national service at all, and that it will be a bad thing, and now this has suddenly been announced, shows that this hasn't been thought about. So I do think it's a vote grab, and yeah, you might be right. I think it does indicate that they're running scared. They know they're going to lose, and they just want to try and hold on to as many votes as they possibly can.